It's the money we come to expect when we retire, our pensions. There's a public employee pension crisis in New Jersey, and it's only getting worse as more and more government employees retire. While no one disagrees about the extent of the problem, who's at fault and what's to be done about it continues to be an ongoing and almost always heated debate. Joining me now to help make sense of New Jersey's pension crisis is Steve Adubato, my co-anchor on New Jersey Capitol Report. Steve, welcome.
Good to be with you, Raf.
So Steve, in a nutshell, what is the problem with the public employee pension in New Jersey? What's at stake?
Public employees, they were promised, we'll pay you less in salary. You'll get paid more on the back end in terms of when you retire, pension and health benefits. The problem is, in order to do that, in order to have the pension and health care fund be solvent, particularly on the pension side, the state of New Jersey had to continue to invest, Raf, in that pension fund. Several governors just didn't do it. They were like, look, I don't have to do it. The law is not forcing me to do it. So I'll take that money if I have it and I'll put it into something else. And that was happening year after year after year until ultimately.
I remember in the 90s, the fund was flush with cash.
Well, the state was flush with cash. There was money there. And they said, let's take some of the money that's in the pension fund. Let's use it to balance a budget. You could do that and get away with it for a period of time. But the problem is what happens when the fund isn't flush. And that's what's happening now. You got a 50, 60, 70, $80 billion, what's called an unfunded liability, which is a fancy way of saying you don't have the money in the fund to pay. More and more public employees are retiring. What happens? Now there's money there for them, but over time, who's going to pay that bill? Our children, our children's children. And that's so wrong to saddle the future generations with that debt, which is going to be tax increases, frankly.
Okay. Now, I remember in 2011, a series of bills, bipartisan, highly touted bills, were passed.
That's right.
And they were supposed to solve this public employee pension problem. Why did they not?
Raf, on Capitol Report, you and I had Governor Christie on. We had Assembly Speaker Prieto. We also had the Senate President Steve Sweeney. Every one of them came on, and the Republicans in the legislature came on as well. They said bipartisan cooperation. We have solved the pension problem.
Yeah,
only one catch. In order to do that, they had to put money that they said they were going to put into the pension fund in law into the pension fund in order to pay down on what they owed. Right. That money was never put in. And they also, in the process, asked the public employees, they raised the retirement age to 65. They cut back on some of the health benefits. So the public employees were asked to give back.
And they did.
They did.
And that's a fact.
And no one thought that the public employees would do that. And they did. The problem is the state never paid their end of the bill.
So what's the governor saying now about all this?
What the governor is saying today is what the governor said back in December of last year. We sat down with the governor right in this studio, and I asked him about this in a live one-hour program, and I asked him about Senate President Steve Sweeney, who frankly accuses the governor of not keeping the deal. When I asked the governor about this, the governor is as blunt as he always is. We actually had Steve Sweeney, the president of the Senate. He said on our show, as it follows up this NJ.com question, he said we had a great deal with the governor to close the pension gap, to fund it, and Sweeney told Raphael and I on Capitol Report, the governor broke the promise, and he always thought you were a guy that would keep your promises, and he was shocked. Please explain.
Now listen, the fact is that unless Steve comes up with a way to print money,
You mean the Senate President?
Well, I call him Steve.
Okay.
Unless Steve comes up with a way to print money, he knows full well, nor did the Democrats ever come forward with a plan that would have fully made the pension payment.
So what's the governor's plan now?
The governor says, look, we don't have the money. The governor wants to go back to public employees and renegotiate with them. The Democrats actually do say they have a plan. The Democrats say raise taxes on millionaires. The reality is there's two problems with that. Number one, that raises between $500 and $600 million, which doesn't even begin to close the gap that we're talking about on the pension side. But the other problem is, what does the governor said on the presidential campaign trail?
Right.
He signed a deal that said an agreement, no new taxes. He's not going to sign any any tax increase. So you know there's not going to be any increase in revenues or taxes. You know that the public employees are, they're digging their heels and saying, you expect us to compromise again when the state's not putting in their fair share? Raf, I don't like saying this on MetroFocus, but the fact is, I believe there's a stalemate in the State House.
So there's no solution in the near future?
I want to say there is, but I don't see it right now with Chris Christie and the Democrats in the legislature digging in their heels and pointing fingers at each other, which last time I checked doesn't solve any problem. And the public employees are saying, you go first, you guys put in money, and then you can talk to us about givebacks or compromises again after this. And Chris Christie doesn't seem to be willing to put in any more money. And by the way, a judge, the Superior Court Judge Jacobson, said that the state did not have to put the money in if the state said they didn't have it.
Even if it's a law.
Even if it's the law.
All right, so I have the sense that we'll be talking about this again, Steve. Thanks so much for joining us.
You got it, Ralph.